I thought that we were done with the original movie, but apparently not. Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey is a 2023 indie slasher film directed, produced, written and edited by Rhys Frake Waterfield. It serves as a horror parody of the beloved Winnie-the-Pooh stories by A.A. Milner, twisting our beloved characters into grotesque man-hating caricatures. I did review the film around this time last year, and while I can appreciate anyone trying to be creative and make something, I can't say I really enjoyed the film. It came across as a gimmicky cash grab to me. The original film had a budget of around $50,000 according to Variety magazine, but ended up making approximately $5.2 million worldwide at the box office according to the numbers, and we all know what that means. Strangely enough, there was a very odd controversy surrounding the movie since my review of it came out. Apparently, a 4th grade maths teacher was reported to have shown his class the original film, leading to some of the students needing counselling. I don't understand how this could even occur. Frake Waterfield is now part of a project called the Twisted Childhood Universe, sometimes referred to as the Poohniverse. This franchise will centre around similar horror parodies of public domain fairy tale characters like Pinocchio and Bambi. This will apparently culminate in an Avengers-style get-together, if you will, called the Poohniverse Monsters Assemble. Make of that what you will. So, what about the Blood and Honey sequel? I was interested in reviewing it given that based on the promotional material, the budget was definitely higher than the original movie. I mean, the villain masks from the first Blood and Honey were bought from an online horror shop available to the public called Immortal Masks.
Embarrassing!
But at least that shows one improvement. We'll see how the story goes, but I want to be fair. Am I being too optimistic? Let's find out. Without further ado, on with the review.
Polos is life, 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 sleep all night and then Polos is life.
The movie begins with a classic Winnie-the-Pooh quote, which I guess is supposed to be spooky in this context. Nice try, movie. We get an opening narration just like in the last film.
Since last we saw our Christopher Robin, things haven't been so good.
You can tell that this film is higher budget from this intro alone, and the narrator is the same one as in the last film, so we also get that nice piece of consistency. The quality of the animation has improved as well. To make a long story short, most of the townspeople didn't exactly take Christopher Robin's account of the 100-acre massacre seriously, making him a social pariah. But, as one would expect, there were some diehards who believed him, and they decided to take matters into their own hands, or should I say, pitchforks, and started torching the forest, effectively leaving Pooh with nowhere to hide during the winter. Cue Pooh's search for his old mates. Meanwhile, Christopher became a junior doctor after completing his residency, but I'm pretty sure it's safe to say no one was exactly lining up to get their medical needs met by him. This group of women all hold a seance to summon the hybrid creatures of the 100-acre wood. I don't think it's been confirmed that they're that kind of evil creature at this point, but you never know where this series will go. They get some sort of verbal response warning them and get spooked, but if you know anything about horror movies, even bad ones, you know where this is going.
Death to all of them.
Let's cut to the chase. One gets impaled with a pole, another has her hand slammed in the door when she tries to shut it, only to be set on fire along with the rest of the camper van and crushed by a tree. The third lady is caught in a bear trap, ironic indeed, and sent Catherined without the wheel before being killed with said bear trap. I'm not sure how much of this gruesome content I'll have to censor, so I'll leave it up to editing Soapy. We cut to Christopher having a hypnotherapy session, because, let's be real, who wouldn't need that after what they've seen in these films so far? Christopher is now played by Scott Chambers, whereas Nikolai Leon played the role in the previous film. His hypnotherapist, Mary Darling, is played by Teresa Banham, and yes, that's Wendy Darling's mum's name. I'm pretty sure this is a direct hint at the Twisted Childhood Universe idea, and not a very subtle one at that. The remains of the 3 women from earlier are found by the police, and some guys who were personally connected to them go hunting in the woods, hungry for revenge. Meanwhile, we get a better gander at the creature's lair, where Al tells Pooh that they should attack Ashdown instead of waiting in the woods. We also get an appearance from Piglet, who is heavily implied to have died in the last movie, but we didn't see a body, and you know the rules and all.
Show me the body. No body, no death. Just like Freddy Krueger, Dr. Doom.
As the trio of men are suddenly confronted by Piglet, one of them decides to blow the troublemaker away. So, you kept him alive for this film just for him to be killed less than 20 minutes in? Brilliant. However, Pooh is having none of it, so unleashes his typical brand of brutality on them. One has his throat ripped out, another is impaled with his own gun, and Chris's schoolmate Aaron has half his face blown off. Miraculously, he survives this mostly due to sheer dumb luck and a healthy dose of terror-induced adrenaline, and crawls his way back to Ashdown looking like he's just gone several rounds with a washing machine. Just before Aaron arrives at the hospital, Chris is fired, and exchanges a suspicious look with the janitor, Cavendish, played by Simon Callow. At his next hypnotherapy session, Mary tells Chris that he must unlock some repressed memories to help manage his trauma. It's revealed that Chris's memories of his childhood with Pooh don't reflect reality, as he'd wiped away what he couldn't understand or explain. Pooh had always been dangerous. Christopher had a twin brother called Billy Robin, who was taken on their birthday. What is this, Five Nights at Freddy's? Characters who have appeared earlier or have been mentioned in this movie were also mentioned at this party, and I have to admit, I like this connection. He also now vaguely remembers what the culprit looks like, and that Billy wasn't the only victim. Mary also does a pretty decent job of comforting Chris while remaining professional here, so good job on this front, movie. Lexi, Chris's love interest, catches the kid she's babysitting watching the original Blood and Honey? It's supposed to be an in-universe film adaptation of the events of the first film, like a film within a film thing. One of the lines in this thing left me speechless, so I'm just gonna play this bit for you.
It's porn time.
I was in pure shock. I thought I might have misheard.
In a shocking display of copyright exploitation, Chris researches the string of kidnappings using a search engine called Milner that has a simplified Winnie-the-Pooh eating honey logo. You can't make this shit up. Anyways, he finds that a geneticist called Dr. Gallup's house burned down around the same time as the kidnappings. Is this a callback to the whole crossbreeds thing? I think we can all see where this is going. During a chat with the police, Chris discovers that Aaron wants a word with him before sharing the gory details with the authorities. Aaron scribbles, "You were right," on a whiteboard, and said that they did this to him, followed by exposing his now mangled face. This is actually kind of sad for both characters, but I can say that it will probably get better for Aaron physically once he has time to heal. One of Chris's pals, Finn, overhears some animal noises while in the shower, and because this is a horror movie, he decides to channel his inner Sherlock Holmes and investigate. He's attacked by Owl, who vomits acid on him a la The Fly. Owl vomit isn't particularly caustic as far as I know, although this may simply be a reference to the fact that they produce pellets in a spooky way. He then stabs his eyes out with his claws to finish the job. Yuck. As his suspicion about Cavendish has been growing throughout the film, Christopher finally confronts him and threatens to kill him if he doesn't spill the beans.
It's just shite luck.
Cavendish spills all, revealing that Gallup wanted to use some children for his twisted experiments, something the first film conveniently glossed over, and offered to pay off Cavendish's gambling debts to make it happen. Cavendish only found out about the scheme after the fact, and Gallup got spooked by the fruits of his labour, killed them, and then just dumped them in the 100-acre wood. Enraged, Cavendish took care of Gallup, but as you can guess, the children didn't stay buried. Yeah, that explains a lot.
I don't know how crossbreeding such different species is even biologically possible without some kind of scientific intervention. Are we supposed to assume that the gang was grown in a lab or something? That's the theory I'm going with.
Everybody hands go up, and they stay there, and they say yeah.
After explaining everything, Cavendish offs himself, which is an understandable way to write him out. I'm sure few folks could live with the guilt. Meanwhile, Pooh crashes the house Lexi's babysitting, and she and the kid make a quick exit. The peelers show up, and to the surprise of no one, the one that goes inside meets a gruesome end. Yawn. Christopher takes some of the evidence of Gallup's experiments from Cavendish's house, and learns from a tape recording that the hybrids have also developed a healing factor. Why would he think that getting rid of them would work then? Maybe he was just that desperate that logic flew out of the window? Then again, he performed these experiments in the first place, so logic and morality isn't really his forte. Lexi breaks the news to Chris that Finn's gone toes up, and advises him to pay a visit to his folks, before they become Pooh Bear's next target. Unfortunately for Chris, Lexi's right on the money. His mum gets her head smashed into some exposed knives that were foreshadowed earlier, while his dad meets his maker off camera. If Pooh is indeed Billy, oblivious to his life before being the bear, that just adds an extra layer of messed upness to this whole ordeal. Chris finally returns home, but he's too late, obviously. He stumbles upon his parents, or what's left of them, and promptly loses his lid. The fact that his little sister Bunny's gone suddenly hits him too. Meanwhile, everyone's been yapping about this big rave party all movie long, and suddenly we're thrust into the midst of it, like we're the ones who forgot to RSVP. Talk about a harsh transition, although I assume that was on purpose on the filmmaker's part. The rave party's theme is like a bizarre love child of Hellraiser and Blade Runner. The first film had only one victim sans clothes, so naturally, the sequel needed to up the ante with a whole rave full of clothing-challenged people.
Sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs.
Pooh and Tigger burst onto the scene, murdering as they go, all while dodgy rave music plays in the background. As is their role as simple additions to the body count during the last 20 minutes of the film, the attendees frantically scramble around like they're trying to find their missing earplugs. As they flee from their attackers, Pooh launches into a sprint on all fours, an effect that admittedly could benefit from some more time in the editing room, but Pooh's prey managed to trap him behind a gate. Unlucky for them, Tigger is on the other side, and all the lights go out. Yeah, they're finished. Looks like Chris wasn't the murderer after all, eh? For some reason, Tigger has an American accent and talks all Freddy Krueger style.
Come here, you fluorescent bitch. Better watch where you're going, bitch. That's bitch.
Thankfully, Chris shows up to kickstart the plot again, and he appears to shoot Tigger, though we don't actually see a body, just a swift disappearance. Remember that rule we established earlier, folks?
Show me the body. No body, no death.
Chris and Pooh begin their showdown, Pooh brandishing a chainsaw and Chris a pipe. Good luck to you, Chris. May your trusty pipe be enough to take down the mighty Pooh Bear. Pooh chases Chris to the spot where Gallup buried him, which naturally triggers him. Chris, in a bold move, decides to address Pooh as Billy, but it doesn't go too well, as he ends up getting strangled. Lexi shows up and climbs on top of Pooh, who attempts to shove her into the whirring chainsaw. However, Chris intervenes, using an axe to give Pooh's head a decisive whack. I mean, having to do your own brother in? That's just ouch. The police arrive shortly after, accompanied by Bunny, who was hiding in the house the whole time, still in shock over the awful fate of their parents. Lexi, Chris, and Bunny drive away and the credits roll. Nevertheless, a mid-credit scene treats us to Owl's solemn vow to resurrect his fallen allies and return, because, of course, this isn't over yet. Now, let's get into the crux of this film. One of the standout features of Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2 is its ability to craft a tangible plot that holds together cohesively. In contrast, the original film relied heavily on the gimmick of being a horror-themed adaptation of a now public domain beloved children's character, focusing primarily on shock value and gore. This approach led to a lack of depth and development in the main story, with Christopher Robin being relegated to a minor role and victims being primarily rural types and college students who didn't play a significant part in the narrative. It's more like a bunch of grotesque kill scenes loosely strung together by some backstory rather than an actual movie plot. Here, we actually spend a significant amount of time with Christopher Robin, as we should given that he's the protagonist. If we learn more about the character, we will care more about their struggles, hence why the climax is filled with a bunch of no-names. Cavendish calling Christopher Robin's brother and friends being chosen as Gallup's guinea pigs shite luck was also something that really stood out to me. There's an element of unsettling realism in that it could have been any other group and yet the outcome would have been very similar. Chris and his loved ones were just unlucky enough to be having a party as Cavendish went by the neighbourhood. They were just in the right place at the wrong time. I would say that the acting has certainly improved overall given what the film is trying to achieve. None of that business from the last film. I did really like the relationship that Christopher had with his family especially, and it's really well showcased in the scene where he talks about the Ashdown kidnappings with his parents.
I remember seeing him stand in the middle of a dirt road, frozen. I'll never forget the look on your face.
Another notable improvement over the first Blood and Honey is the practical effects, which beats out using online horror shop masks. While I generally like the villains' designs, Al stood out to me as particularly unusual. In fact, Al's design bears a striking resemblance to the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers. Is anyone else getting that vibe from this? I'd also prefer if they differentiated between Pooh and Tigger's designs more, because it's hard to tell who's who in some shots. In addition, anatomical realism in terms of body horror doesn't seem to be this film's priority. Aside from the owl vomit, another example that I can think of is this one kill scene where Pooh decapitates a girl, and despite this, she keeps screaming until her head is completely off. Since the vocal cords are located in the neck, it's likely that she would lose her voice before her head came a-suing. While it might seem like a minor detail, this inconsistency really pulled me out of the story. The pacing is also a little strange. The first half is very character focused, and the second half is all gore. While this kind of plot framing is very common in horror, slashers in particular, I would prefer if there was a little more balance in future installments. Let's take a look at the general consensus about Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2 at the time of this review. It surprisingly has an audience score of 77% on Rotten Tomatoes, its critical consensus reading, Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2 represents an improvement over the original in most respects, although the Poohniverse remains a place for hardcore slasher fans. In the same vein, its top 3 critic reviews read, Frake Waterfield attempts to pass off his cheapjack mode as self-conscious kitsch, with a few lines of dialogue which may as well have been spoken while the actor winks towards the lens. This splatterfest horror feature is better than its predecessor, much in the same way succeeding COVID variants are better than the early, more lethal strains. A sequel that ups the ante in virtually every way. None of them are good. By comparison, its audience consensus reads, Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2 is a gory good time with better production values than the first movie, along with more backstory for the characters. All of the verified audience reviews seem pretty positive from what I could tell as well. Makeup effects, backstory, owl. The only movie in history where the sequel is better than the original. They made a lot of things better, I actually enjoyed this one a lot more. If you've seen the first, this one is worth a watch as well. You can tell they're starting to have more fun and funding with these. Gorefest, good background story, well needed. I have to say, I agree with the audience reviews overall. On Letterboxd, the film is rated a 2.3 out of 5 stars, which could be a lot worse. Here are some of the reviews from lowest to highest. Same as ever. Tigger was the only reason I came and I was thoroughly disappointed. The movie itself is horrible. However, it is so fun to watch. Can't wait to see more. Massive improvement on the first one, but still quite shit. Greatest movie ever made? The best movie 2024. It appears that we are a people divided. Besides having seen the first film, I went into this movie completely blind, not having read any reviews beforehand and only watching the trailer when it was released. I have to say that I too am genuinely curious and looking forward to seeing where the series will go, because it does seem like the filmmakers are at least trying now. To conclude, my experience with Winnie-the-Pooh Blood and Honey 2 was unexpectedly engaging, despite being somewhat of a mixed bag. While I appreciate the film's attempts to create a darker, more atmospheric tone and its willingness to expand its storyline with some much needed detail, I couldn't help but feel like some aspects of the storytelling fell short. As someone who went into the film without prior knowledge of reviews or spoilers, I was left with a sense of curiosity about the franchise's future, and I'm intrigued by its potential. Despite its imperfections, I'm looking forward to seeing where its creators will take this series next, and what they'll do to address future criticism. I have to say that I really appreciate the indie approach in an industry dominated by Hollywood. It makes me want to see these films grow and succeed. If you felt let down by the first film, like myself, you may want to check this one out as it may surprise you. However, if you're seeking a more refined cinematic experience, you may want to adjust your expectations accordingly. Well, that's all for this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching.
The blue and green ones are my favorite kind, but I'll eat the colored ones from time to time. Cause Polos is life, 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 Polos is life. Sleep all night and then Polos